everyone, I'm Eric, and this is the art and science of healing chronic disease, where we focus on healing by aligning with nature. And I call it an art and a science because it's really important to first learn the science and then take that science and use it to paint a picture of health for your personal situation. This is video number 2 called The Foundation of Nutrition for Healing Chronic Disease. And if you have not yet watched video number 1, please go back and watch video number 1 now before watching video number 2. Because video number 2 will not give you nearly as much benefit unless you have the foundation from video number 1. So in video number 1, we talked about damage to the gut microbiome and damage to the cell mitochondria and how that is the main contributors to chronic disease. As we discussed, there are other contributors to chronic disease, but those two, gut microbiome and cell mitochondria, those two are the foundation of healing chronic disease. We can do all kinds of other fancy treatments. We can see all kinds of functional medicine doctors. We can use all kinds of supplements and many different things. But if we don't fix those two things, they're not going to have a lasting effect on healing of chronic disease. So today we're going to focus on the main nutritional component that goes along with healing the gut microbiome and the cell mitochondria. So let's get right into it. So in this video, the main tool we're going to discuss is what I call whole food nutritional therapeutic ketosis. So you've probably heard the word ketosis, or you've heard of a ketogenic diet. And basically what a ketogenic diet is restricting your consumption of carbohydrates to a point where the body is no longer dependent on glucose to generate energy and fuel. And the body can now use fat in a fat-adapted state to generate ketones, and the body can use these ketones in place of glucose to generate ATP to create energy for the body. And in order to get yourself into a state of nutritional therapeutic ketosis, we generally need to restrict our carbohydrate consumption to less than 20 to 25 grams of carbohydrates per day. When you limit your carbohydrate consumption to less than that amount, then the body, over a short period of time, will become adapted to using fat as its energy source instead of using glucose as its energy source. So how is this going to help the gut microbiome and the cell mitochondria to heal? Well, let's take a look first at the gut microbiome. So as we talked about in video number 1, as these microbes start translocating from the large intestine up into the small intestine, the duodenum, the stomach, the esophagus, it creates problems. They're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to remain in the large intestine. But when they creep up into the upper gut and they start fermenting and they start producing all these toxins that make us feel really, really sick, we have to find a way to get rid of them. And one of the ways to get rid of them is simply to starve them. If we don't give them what they eat, then they can't survive in the place where they're not supposed to be, which is the upper gut. So by using a nutritionally therapeutic ketogenic diet, we can starve these microbes that depend on sugar and fiber. Now, what about the good bacteria that are beneficial to us? Well, they survive and thrive very, very well on amino acids. They survive very, very well without any carbohydrates, without any sugar, without any fiber. So if we eliminate the sugar, the fiber, the carbohydrates, we can get rid of these pathogenic microbes and we can nurture the healthy microbes that are going to allow us to heal. So this is the first objective with implementation of nutritional therapeutic ketosis. We're going to starve these pathogenic microbes out so that we can nurture the healthy microbes. And in the process of starving these pathogenic microbes, that will give our gut lining a chance to heal. Because one of the big problems with chronic disease is that when the gut gets out of balance, the lining of the gut, the epithelial layer, this wafer thin layer of cells, one cell layer thick, that allows substances to move from the inside of the intestine into the body. When that lining becomes damaged, that is a major cause of inflammation. It's a major cause of activating the immune system. And so by implementing the nutritionally therapeutic ketogenic diet, we can give the lining of the gut a chance to heal. We can give it a chance to heal so that microbes do not enter the body, so that toxins do not enter the body, so that all of these destructive molecules that are contributing to chronic disease can remain in the gut and not cause inflammation and not cause activation of the immune system inside of the body. So the second part of this is cell mitochondria healing. Well, how is a nutritionally therapeutic ketogenic diet going to help mitochondria to heal? Well, you'll remember in video number 1, we talked about how insulin is extremely damaging to the mitochondria. So by using a ketogenic diet, which restricts carbohydrates, this is going to allow our body to rest our insulin. It's going to allow our body to rest the beta cells of the pancreas so that we do not need to produce as much insulin. And by lowering or restricting the amount of insulin that is circulating throughout our body, this now gives our mitochondria a chance to heal. They're not constantly being bombarded by the byproducts that insulin contributes to, as we talked about in video number 1, such as the large increase in ceramides and reactive oxygen species. So when we're consuming carbohydrates all day long in high quantities, in high concentrations, at every meal and every snack, then insulin is being triggered constantly. But when we move toward a nutritionally therapeutic ketogenic diet, then the body stops producing insulin all day long, and it gives the mitochondria a chance to heal. Now, there are many other benefits to this type of nutrition, and those benefits would include the nutrients that are so very, very important for our bodies to heal. And what are those nutrients? Well, those nutrients are proteins, which come in the form of amino acids and fatty acids. So when we're eating a ketogenic diet, our diet consists of a lot of meats, a lot of eggs, a lot of seafood, maybe some dairy, depending on how our body tolerates dairy. And that gives our body the complete spectrum of amino acids that it needs. It gives us the proper distribution of amino acids. It also is going to give us the proper distribution of fatty acids. And those two components, amino acids and fatty acids, in the right amounts and the right quality are essential to healing our bodies when we're suffering from chronic disease. Additionally, the ketogenic diet is also going to give us the necessary vitamins, minerals that we may have been deficient in on our previous diets. So not only are we taking care of repair to the gut microbiome and the mitochondria, but we're also giving our body the nutrients it requires in the correct dosages that it requires for a proper human diet so that we can heal. And this type of diet is also going to eliminate fatty acids that are harmful that we've been consuming for much of our lives, and it's also going to help eliminate a lot of toxins that we've been consuming for a large portion of our lives. And in many cases, we didn't even know that they were problematic. We had just been taught or told that we should consume these foods and those foods, and we were not made aware that they contain many toxins, both natural and artificial, and many fatty acids that are damaging to our body, do not allow our cell membranes and our mitochondrial membranes to construct properly. And so we'll be able to eliminate those by implementing the nutritional therapeutic ketogenic diet. So a lot of people ask, well, how do I start on a ketogenic diet? And as I mentioned before, the objective is to lower our carbohydrate intake so it's below 20 to 25 grams per day. That will allow us to enter a ketogenic state. But I do not recommend that people do that all at once. I think it's a better idea to ease into it a little bit. And the reason is this. The reason is that most of us who live in the United States have physical addiction to carbohydrates. And if you eliminate all of those carbohydrates all at once, you will experience withdrawal symptoms. And they can be pretty nasty. So my suggestion is to first do some more research on the ketogenic diet. I'm going to give you some resources that will help you with that. But as you start to implement a ketogenic diet, I would not drop down to 20 grams, less than 20 grams of carbohydrates right away. Instead, what I would suggest is consider easing to it. Get yourself under 100 grams of carbohydrates per day. Stay there for a week or so. And lower it to 50. See how you feel for a week or so. Then lower it to 35-ish. For another week or so, and then get down to 20 to 25 grams of carbohydrates per day. This will give your body a little bit of a chance to adapt. It will give you a chance to ease into the carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms that you might feel so that you don't get hit with them all at once. You may have heard of the term keto flu, and that's a term used to describe the symptoms that people feel when and if they go into a ketogenic state too quickly. And it's usually the result of carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. Now, there's a second issue as well when you go into a ketogenic diet that you want to be aware of, and that is your electrolyte balance. Not for all people, but for some people, when they go onto a ketogenic diet, their electrolytes can get a little bit messed up for a period of time until their body adapts to it. And really the main way to deal with that is to just make sure you're getting enough salt. There could be the need for additional things like the possibility of needing some extra potassium or magnesium, these types of things. But for most people, if you're just getting enough salt with your ketogenic diet, you won't experience many of the electrolyte issues. Drink water when your body tells you you're thirsty, but you don't need to drink liters and liters and gallons per day. Drink when you're thirsty. Drink till your thirst is satisfied. And that will be the right amount of water for you. So there's going to be foods that you are going to have to eliminate for two reasons. One reason is in order to achieve a ketogenic state, you're really going to have to limit your carbohydrates. And the second reason is because there are certain foods that really, really contribute to chronic disease and chronic illness. And those foods must be eliminated. So what are these foods that have to be eliminated? Well, first of all processed foods must be eliminated from your diet if you intend to heal from chronic disease. And those processed foods include all seed and vegetable oils. Those must be eliminated. So those would be canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower, safflower, rice bran, walnut, peanut, and corn oil. Those must be eliminated. Now, in addition to that, all grains must be eliminated. Why grains? Grains contain a large amount of what are called lectins, and lectins are part of the big problem for leaky gut, for basically unzippering the tight junctions between the epithelial cells of your gut lining, which allows molecules to pass through into the body that are not supposed to be there. Lectins contribute to that, and therefore grains must be eliminated. You've probably heard of people who have gluten intolerance or they're allergic to gluten. The big problem there is that gluten contributes to leaky gut. So what are grains that must be eliminated? Well, wheat, rice, oats, corn, maize, barley, buckwheat, rye, sorghum, spelt, bulgur, tapioca, quinoa. You're also going to want to eliminate cereals, couscous. Those types of things must be eliminated from our diets if we want to heal from chronic disease. Next on the list is all starches. So that's going to be potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, parsnips, arrowroot, taro. You're also going to want to eliminate sugar. So sugar is going to come in the forms of candy, soft drinks, sauces, snacks, food bars, baked goods. Of course, all these things are going to have sugar in them. Next on the list is all beans. Beans also contain a very large amount of lectins. Lectins can be reduced in beans if the beans are prepared properly, but they cannot be eliminated. So the best way is to completely eliminate beans, and that would include soy, garbanzo, bean sprouts, chickpeas, faba beans, black beans, kidney, mung beans. All of those must be eliminated. And for some people are going to be sensitive to lactose as well. So things like milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, sour cream, dried milk might need to be eliminated. That's not the case for everyone. So you'll have to experiment and see how you feel with and without lactose, and that will help you to decide if that's something that you're going to need to eliminate from your diet. Now, things like lactose doesn't necessarily mean you're going to need to eliminate that forever. It means you're going to need to eliminate that until your body heals. Some of these other things, however, such as grains and beans, these may or may not be necessary to eliminate forever if you want to keep your chronic disease in remission. Some people are able to add back a small amount, but keep in mind that if and when you do add back grains, cereals, beans, these contain quite a bit of carbohydrates, and that will kick you out of a ketogenic state. So that's something to bear in mind as well as you begin to heal and are contemplating with whether or not you want to add some of these foods back in. Now, there are other foods that you may need to eliminate depending on whether or not they're triggering illness for you. So these can be things like nightshades, the FODMAP foods, it could be oxalates, it could be phytates, it could be fructans, there could be even others that I am not mentioning now. There may be foods that you may or may not have sensitivity to that are contributing to your chronic disease. And we'll talk more about these nuances in subsequent videos. But for now, I just want to get that general guideline out there that there may be some other foods. So, people are suffering every day from chronic disease, chronic illness. It seems very, very intimidating to have to eliminate all of these foods, to have to start a ketogenic diet, to have to go through the possibility of carbohydrate withdrawal. But if you are that sick, if you're experiencing symptoms that we talked about in video number 1, symptoms that I've personally experienced, symptoms that my friends and family members have and are experiencing, if that is you, it will be worth it to you and you will get used to it, and you in a month, 3 months, 6 months from now, be so happy that you made the switch to eliminate these foods that are contributing to your chronic disease. And again, it may not have to be forever. Hopefully this is going to be a 3 to 12 month healing journey, and hopefully after that you're going to feel much better and you'll be able to start adding back some of these foods. It could be longer, it could even be quicker depending on what your situation is. But all of us who face chronic disease have frustration. All of us have challenges. It's not easy healing from this. So be patient with yourself. You're going to mess up sometimes. I did. Everybody does. You're going to have a day when you just can't resist and you delve into some carbohydrates, whatever they may be, whatever your vice is. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't get too frustrated. Just regroup. Look at your plan again. We're going to talk about detailed plans in these videos that will be coming up. And reprogram your mind. Get yourself back into the state of mind that's going to get you back on the ketogenic diet, and then just move forward. So a ketogenic diet can be particularly challenging for people who are coming from a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. And I recognize that when you have to give up grains and beans and starches, there's not a lot left to eat for vegans and vegetarians. So I'm going to do an entirely separate video that will be coming up in the future specifically for vegans and vegetarians to help them adjust their mindset, adjust their diet, to make this work for them if that's something that they want to do. In addition to the foods that you must eliminate are the foods that you must add, the foods that will give you the amino acids, the fatty acids, the vitamins, and the minerals. And we've already talked about that, but I just wanted to put that point back in here, that the meats, that the seafood, the eggs, dairy, and if, by the way, you have difficulty tolerating lactose, a great form of dairy is fermented goat's milk. That's what I consume. That's what has been helping me to get calcium. It's been helping me to tolerate dairy, because when you ferment goat's milk, it gets rid of most of the lactose. It gets rid of most of the sugar. And to start with, goat's milk has much less casein than cow's milk. And casein is a protein that many people are sensitive to. So if you're going to consume dairy, consider using fermented goat milk. So how will you know if you're in the state of ketosis with your therapeutic nutritional diet? Well, one of the ways you can know for sure if you're in ketosis is to measure ketones in your blood. And I have a little device that I use. It's called a Keto Mojo device. You don't have to get this, but if you want to verify that you're actually in ketosis, it's a very, very, very useful tool. It also can be used to measure your blood glucose, so you'll be able to chart on your spreadsheets whether your glucose is being well managed, which on a ketogenic diet you'll find that glucose is very well managed, as well as insulin. So it's something you may want to look into, may want to consider. Can you do it without that device? You can. You can do it without the device. But it's nice for some people who want to verify they have ketones in their blood. That's a great tool to use. What other tools are good? Well, as far as resources go, this book here, it's called Ketogenic, The Science of Therapeutic Carbohydrate Restriction in Human Health. This is a fantastic resource. This book has 3,485 studies that are used to write this medical textbook. So you may be a little intimidated when I say that this is a medical textbook, but it's written in a way that I've found to be fairly easy for the average person to understand. So I would recommend, if you're looking for additional resources to learn about ketosis, this textbook called Ketogenic, edited by the Nutrition Network, is a great place to start. So there's one more nutritional tool that I highly recommend, particularly to help the mitochondria heal. And this tool is what's called intermittent fasting. Most of us have heard of intermittent fasting, and basically what it means is you eat your meals during a restricted time period of the day. So for example, I typically eat at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and roughly 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. So that gives my body 18 hours of fasting every single day. And what that fasting does is, one, it allows the gut to rest, which we want to heal the gut. But number two, it puts insulin on pause. And when we put insulin on pause for 18 hours a day, now your mitochondria every day have 18 hours with very, very, very little insulin being generated by the pancreas. So this gives the mitochondria a long healing period each and every day that it can be without increased ceramides, reactive oxygen species, and over time, intermittent fasting can really, really, really bump up the level of recovery that you're going to experience with chronic disease. So why does this ketogenic diet work so well? Well, it works so well because this is how humans evolved. Humans have been around for about 2.5, 3 million years. In the beginning of that 2.5, 3 million year time period, humans lived pretty close to the ground. They ate a lot of insects. They ate very few plants. They ate very few animals. But there was a point in history when the human brain discovered things like tools. They discovered that you could break a rock and form a sharp edge, and that sharp edge could be used to cut meat away from animals that had already been killed by another animal. So humans were able to start scavenging. Once they started scavenging, they started getting these dense nutrients in the form of amino acids, in the form of fatty acids, in the form of vitamins and minerals that they couldn't get before. And at that point in history, the archaeological record shows that the human brain grew very, very rapidly through evolution because of these high nutritionally dense foods that people were eating. But they didn't have a school cafeteria. They didn't have a convenience store. They didn't have refrigerators. They didn't have vending machines. They didn't have donuts at the office. They didn't have any of these high concentrated carbohydrate foods in high dosages that were available all day long in every cafeteria, vending machine, and school lunchroom across the country. That just was not available. So the body, 2.5 million years ago, 1 million years ago, 100,000 years ago, would go long periods of time when they did not have any carbohydrates. For example, winter. So humans may have been able to access some plants during the summer months in very small amounts, seasonally. But as the end of October, November, in places like the Northeast where I live, the availability of plants was no longer there. People would have to rely on hunting. They would have to rely on the consumption of animal products to get through the winter until they made it to June or early July, when berries may start coming back into season. So the human body became very adapted to being in the ketogenic state during the long winter months, which may have been 9 to 10 months, depending on what part of the earth people were living at. Obviously near the Arctic Circle, cultures there would be going much longer during the winter months in a ketogenic state before they had access to any plants. There's some cultures who evolved and still do eat just meat. For example, the Sami in the Arctic Circle of Norway. They to this day they still live predominantly on reindeer. That is what their diet is, and they remain in a ketogenic state for pretty much the whole year. So ketogenic state is the way humans are meant to be for at least a good portion of the year. So when we eat that way, when we get rid of all of these dense carbohydrates that exist in every place that we go to in modern day life, when we get rid of those high dosages and high frequency carbohydrates, our body can now enter our ancestral state. It can now enter our evolutionary state that our cells have evolved on, so they can now implement the proper healing that we've been denying them for so many years of eating a modern American diet. And this is reflected in the archaeological record as well. When you look back to the start of the agricultural revolution, which began roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago, after the agricultural revolution began, the archaeological record shows that humans got shorter, their brains got smaller, their dental arches got smaller, their teeth began to rot, their bones were more brittle, their joints were weaker. This is all shown in the archaeological record, which is further confirmation that the human body did much better on a high animal meat, high animal fat diet. So when we can put ourselves back into that state, back into that ancestral type of eating, our bodies can now begin to heal. So think of it this way. Every species on planet Earth has one very, very specific diet. And every member of that species eats only that very, very specific diet. So why should humans be any different? Why would it be healthy for humans to eat Oreo cookies? Why would it be healthy for humans to eat any high dose carbohydrate that our ancestors did not eat, when every other species on the planet does not do well when they veer away from their very, very specific, species-specific diet? So take, for example, animals in the zoo. If you ask any zoologist, veterinarian who works in a zoo, say, hey, why do you feed the gorillas this? Why do you feed the lions that? Why don't you just give them whatever's available, kind of like humans do? And they say, well, because that would be cruel to those animals. It would be cruel to give lions just lettuce to eat. It would be cruel to give, chimpanzees just meat to eat when they're not used to eating just meat all day long every day. So every species has a very, very specific diet, and humans are no different. What is our proper human diet? It's probably about somewhere between 80% animal meat, animal fat, and 20% plants, up to maybe 100% animal meat, 0% plants. When we look from the equator to the Arctic Circle, and how different human ancestors have evolved in those areas over the years. It's probably somewhere between an 80-20 and a 100-0 animal to plant mix. So if we can put ourselves back into that ancestral state and allow the evolution that our bodies have experienced to take control, we can then give ourselves a chance to heal. But when we keep in high doses of carbohydrates in high concentrations and high frequency, that's when we get into trouble. You know, humans, we were not meant to eat spinach all year long. We were meant to eat plants that were similar to spinach in a very, very short time period, maybe in the summertime. And then our bodies would have 10 to 11 months to get rid of the toxins that are in spinach. Things like oxalate. I got oxalate poisoning from eating too much spinach, too much beets, too much nuts, too much nut butter, too much raspberries and kiwi. I was eating high concentrations of those all year long, and I didn't give my body a chance to excrete those toxins, and I got oxalate poisoning. So because of the oxalate poisoning, I got kidney stones, I got aches in all of my joints, headaches, dizziness, because I was eating what I thought were health foods. But they're only health foods if you eat them the way our ancestors did, which is seasonally. A month for a short time period, then give your body 11 months to get rid of the toxins that are in foods like that. So I really want to help people to think more ancestrally. If you're going to incorporate any new diet or nutritional plan, only incorporate that if it is a confirmed way that our ancestors actually consumed foods. So lastly, I would just like to leave you with a reminder that as you move into a whole food, nutritional, therapeutic, ketogenic diet, just want to remind you that if you run into trouble, if you get frustrated, don't beat yourself up too badly. It's a process. It's very, very difficult to do overnight, and probably you're not going to feel very well if you do implement it overnight. So I'll just remind you to ease in to the ketogenic diet. If you have concerns, please leave comments down below. Get in touch with me. I will do my very, very best to help each and every one of you who reaches out to me to get accustomed to the ketogenic diet, to do it in a healthy way, to do it in a way that you'll enjoy and give you encouragement along the line. So reach out for this book when you get a chance. I have no affiliation whatsoever with any of the books that I'm recommending. I have no affiliation with the Nutrition Network or the Ketogenic book, but I think you'll really, really get a lot of knowledge out of that book. And I will work on the next video and hopefully have that available to you guys in the next couple of weeks. Take care and have a great day.